Hello, and welcome to the Working Tools Podcast. Today we're going to be discussing the cable tow.
Ladies and gentlemen, brethren all, welcome to the Working Tools Podcast, a casual conversation around Freemasonry. First, it's important to note that our opinions and thoughts are our own and do not reflect those of our Grand Lodge or respective craft or concordant bodies. Please connect with us and ask questions, either here on YouTube or on our Facebook page. We'd also appreciate a thumbs up and especially any comments on our videos.
And I'm Matt Appel from the Grand Lodge of Washington, and I have with me very worshipful brother David Colbeth.
Hey Matt, how are you doing today?
All right, how about yourself?
Excellent. Thanks for having the show. Having me on the show. I guess I'm a host, so I'm not a guest.
Exactly. You've been here longer than I have, so
it is pretty exciting to have you part of the show now. I was very, very happy to have the conversation with you at Grand Lodge and have you interested. So.
Yeah, well, like I said, I listen to entirely too many Masonic podcasts, and it's been my secret dream to be on one. So it's totally a dream come true.
Awesome. Very cool. Very cool.
My family would say not so secret dream, but that's aside. So like I said, today we're going to be discussing the cable tow, sort of what it symbolizes and how it's used in the lodge. And I know, David, you've read some about it, and I've been trying to work on it too. So I'll say right up front, one of my favorite books about Masonry. That doesn't work. One of my favorite books about Masonry is...
Maybe if you tilt it back a little bit, I get the glare. There you go.
Meditations on Masonic Symbolism. It's by John Eisner. And it's essentially for his lodge's trestle board, he wrote a series of pieces on Masonic symbolism, and he covers everything from the cable tow to specific language from the ritual and other things. And he's got a couple of good articles in this book about, and there's a second one too, there's a sequel. But he's got a couple of good articles about the cable tow in here, which will, I think, shed some light on me at least about what it symbolizes and how we use it in lodge.
Very cool. Very cool. That's awesome. I'm not familiar with that particular book, but I'll definitely we'll make a footnote of it in the Facebook page.
Yeah, I really like it, if only because it's a series of like 2, 3, 4 page articles, so it's sort of digestible. You know, you're sitting in the waiting room at the dentist's office, you can read one and go, huh. And I really liked it. It was a good one.
Excellent.
But anyway, so today we're gonna discuss what we think about the cable tow, and sort of, like I said, what it symbolizes and how we use it in the ritual and its length and all that sort of good stuff. So I will say it's used in the ritual literally in lodge. Both we discuss it, and there is one in the lodge room as we go through our rituals for some of the degrees, for all the degrees. And it is used, I suppose, foremost to symbolize the attachment of the brother to the lodge, and vice versa, the attachment of the lodge to the brother, and how we are bound together. And I suppose I should mention at this point, for anyone who hasn't been initiated, that the cable tow that we're talking about is essentially a length of, in the ritual setting, it's a length of rope that we use in the ritual that is, it's present during the rituals that we use and we discuss, like I said, both as a symbol of our attachment and as a symbol of our willingness to assist one another.
Yeah, Mackey talks about it being that it's purely a Masonic word, which I didn't really realize, but there's a German word for cable or rope is cable tow, and he thinks that's where it came from, the word cable tow, that derives. And maybe we're going to talk about that, and I stole your thunder there. I don't know, but.
Not at all. Actually, I was just thinking during our last episode, you had mentioned that Mackey said something was that the gavel was the German word with gable for houses, and when you said that, my first thought was, well, he also says that apparently he likes to tie his things back to German language heritage there.
Yeah, is he? I don't know much about Mackey, honestly. His actual heritage, is he German? I wonder. Maybe that's another.
I don't think so, but I probably should know that.
We'll have to make a footnote to learn more about Mackey, and maybe that we can have a show on Mackey, maybe, because he's written a lot of books. Anyway, so yeah, it talks about that being that the German. He believes that the German derivative of the word, but. And he also talks about that the cable tow seems to have been only used as a physical means of controlling the candidate. And you mentioned that it's used in all three of our degrees, or I don't know if that's used in other degrees or not, but for sure in our first 3 degrees. But I was learning in some research, Joseph Fort-Newton talked about that apparently in English lodges, the cable tow, just like the hoodwink, is only used in their first degree. They don't use it in any other degree, and according to him, it has absolutely no symbolic meaning at all, apparently. And then he's trying to chides and says the American Lodge uses it in all 3 degrees and has almost too much meaning, too many meanings. But it goes on to say, I think, how can you not? Everything we use has some symbolism. Everything we do has some symbolism, or it seems like it does, or at least it seems like it should. And so I don't know how you can't think that the cable tow doesn't have some kind of meaning to who we are and our rituals.
Exactly, yeah. Well, I have wondered before about it. It seems like you can't swing a dead cat in a Masonic lodge with coming out with 500 symbols, but I've wondered about if they're all deliberate or not. But on some level, if it's a symbol to you or me, if it's a symbol to the observer, then it's a symbol. You know, if the door behind you or the whatever door behind me is a symbol to somebody of walking through the door and going somewhere and gaining something, then it's a symbol. You know, there's nothing wrong with that, in my opinion. If you see it that way and I don't, yay.
Exactly. And it even, again, it goes back to the Bible. There's a reference in Hosea that it talks about that I drew them with cords of a man, with bands of love. And it's a symbolism of the covenant to which all Freemasons are tied. You talk about the tie to the lodge. It's also about the tie between us, between Masons, and in general. So it's interesting how it can be a symbol for many things, but it's such a powerful symbol. It's a very powerful symbol.
And one of the things I liked about when I was reading about it was the author was talking about that everyone talks about it being you tied to the lodge, that you are now bound to the lodge by the pledges that you make or by the cable tow, etc. But it's a two-way street. There's someone holding the other end of that rope, right? You're bound to the lodge, but the lodge is also bound to you. There's the minister at my church used to like to say that when we accepted new members into the church, that those new members were taking a chance on us, but the church was just as much taking a chance on them. And just because when these new people come, they're going to have new ideas and new ways to do things, and things are going to change for the people in the church too. And the cable tow is the same way. You're accepting that brother is accepting your lodge, and your lodge is accepting that brother. And it's a two-way commitment that we're going to help him out and he's going to help us out.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And it also help as far as we can go, right? There's only so much help we can give each other and only so much we can do for each other. And that's what you talk about, the link of the cable tow or the physical idea. In lodge, it's a relatively short cord, just long enough to be used in various formats. But it also is, I guess we could talk about it, is removed at a certain point. And as you mentioned, it's removed because you no longer need it. Now you've gone from needing to be bound to having a moral or psychological commitment to the lodge, and that is in theory more powerful than the bound rope or bound cord itself. And so it's a very powerful symbol, very powerful.
Yep. And the commitment that we have to one another as brothers that is symbolized there like you said, it can be very powerful. And I know there have been people have discussed trying to quantify it. You know, is it 3 miles? Is a cable tow 3 miles long? Is how far are you willing to go out of the way for your brother? And it's interesting to think about. So as a thought exercise, I was thinking, if there are some brothers in lodge that I'm just closer to than others, right? And if one of these guys was in Massachusetts and needed help badly, I might be willing to fly to Massachusetts to help them out, or at least make phone calls or whatever. And they're on some level, I feel like I should have that level of commitment to all of my brothers, right? But in my heart, I don't know that I do. I don't know if I should confess that on a broadcast, but it's definitely the bonds are tighter with some people than others, and I don't know that that's right in the Masonic term, if that.
Well, and it's also within your ability, your reasonable ability to do it. I mean, at some points in life, your commitments may be stronger than others, or in availability. Just like in our ritual, it doesn't specifically talk about the cable tow, but there's a spot where it says, as far as his necessities require and your ability permits. And they don't say it's the cable tow, but it's all implied that it's through your obligation. And the obligation is what replaces the cable tow. Again, the cable tow is there to help you into the lodge, so to speak, and to take you out if you can't agree. And then the obligation becomes that. And even, we probably should be careful what we're saying here on the sign here, what we're saying, but in the ritual it talks about that this obligation is replaced. The cable tow is replaced with the obligation, essentially, is no longer needed. So, yeah, it was interesting whether and I wonder, as you mentioned, the 3 miles, I wonder if at some point, this was in the 1920s, and so, you're going to lodge on horseback or in a wagon, and at 3 miles an hour, you're 3 miles, that's 3 hours away, travel time. And so I would think that 2 to 3 hours of a man's life each way is a pretty significant commitment. So it's you got to literally pack a lunch.
Yep. And I think it's important for us, in the same way that we should be out there helping brothers and we're bound together, that we should consider what is the length of our cable tow. How far are we willing and able to go? If we know this brother's in trouble, and how do I have the resources to help them? If I'm just not a rich person, and this guy's can't make his house payments, that's not within my ability. My cable tow just isn't that long in that aspect of my life that I'm able to help out. Like you said, to what your ability permits is important. I can't jeopardize my family by engaging in some activities.
Yeah, exactly. I'd be curious to know more about why in English lodges, why the cable tow isn't used after the first degree. Why isn't it more symbolic to them? So if anybody knows about that, I would love to have you comment on that in the Facebook comments or in YouTube comments too. That it's a curious idea.
Yeah, that would be interesting to know. Is that just a Preston Webb holdover, or what happened there? Yeah.
Right. So I know one of the things I was reading about when I was researching it, there was a story about, in the Bible, it was a story about the king of Syria and the king of Israel. And when the king of Israel basically had beaten Syria at war, and this is actually in 1 Kings 20, 31, 32, if you want to go back and read it. And I of course, it's a little bit different in each version of the Bible. And so but it was interesting to read, and to read this and then have the context from the Bible. And as you read more, it's very clear that this actually happened there. It talks about that the king of Syria had been defeated in battle by king of Israel, and the king of Syria's servants were making a plea for his life. And so they approached the king of Israel with ropes upon their heads and speak of his brother Ben-Hadad, the king of Syria, and meaning the king of Israel's brother, meaning the king of Syria. And so it's implied that they were brothers, not physical brothers, but brothers of sorts. And so they were, why would they wear ropes or nooses on their heads? And it was most likely to symbolize a pledge of some sort given in a lodge or otherwise between the two kings, King of Israel and King of Syria, and which they wished to remind the king of Israel and to save his life. So the king of Israel asked, "Is he yet alive? He is my brother." And then we read that the servants of the Syrian king watched to see if the king of Israel made any sign or symbol. And when they caught that he made this sign, they brought the king of Syria before the king of Israel. And not only was the life of the king of Syria spared, but a new pledge was made between the two men, the king of Israel and king of Syria. So pretty powerful idea that these symbols, again, I don't know how English lodges can't believe it's a symbol. And in the Bible too, it talks about it being a symbol, and these servants used it to explain to someone in charge, the king of a commanding army, and he was instantly able to recognize what they were doing, just like we have other symbols of warning in our craft. This wasn't necessarily a sign symbol, but then they were waiting for him basically to reply with a symbol or a sign, which he did apparently, and it says it right in the Bible that they caught his sign. And then once they were confident that, okay, he recognizes why we're here and how we're attired, if you will, then they felt it was safe to bring the king of Syria out to him to where he was hiding, basically, that his life might be spared. So it was really, and so it goes on to say that the cable tow, of course, is an outward and visible symbol of a vow in which a man has pledged his life, or at least pledged himself to save another life at the risk of his own. And its length and strength are measured by the ability of the man to fulfill his obligation, a sense of moral sanctity of his obligation, a test that is both of his capacity and of his character. So not only how far he can go or what he can do, but will he do that? So anyway, pretty powerful stuff. It's amazing with a little piece of rope how much symbolism can be in a little piece of rope.
It's interesting, and I'm totally shooting from the hip on this, but I wonder about. I'm picturing in my head Arabic headgear where they have the sort of the white cloth and the ropes that sort of hold it up. I find myself almost wondering if there's a symbolism there that I'm totally unaware of. But that was when you described their dress. That's what sort of came to my mind. Anyway.
Yeah, could be. Yeah, it does say ropes upon their heads, and then it goes on to talk about a rope around their neck, essentially. So I don't know. It is you wonder too, is the author of this particular article, is he paraphrasing a little bit? But in the Bible it does talk about upon their heads. So I don't know if it meant around their neck or if it meant on their head. You don't really know. I didn't look at several of the versions to see. Of course, you look at 4 or 5 different versions of the Bible and you can get 6 different answers. But
that's exactly what I was about to say. Is it very much depends on what version you were reading, who translated it. So
yeah.
So did you have any other interesting stories you come across about the
not
people?
Necessarily. It is a fascinating thing, although it's once you talk about what the meanings are of it is ultimately just a piece of rope. It symbolizes something. That's like the gavel and the Bible and all these different symbols, the things that we use in our lodges. They're ultimately just what they are, but we use them for different things. Like you mentioned, the trowel is used to spread the cement. It's just a symbol of something we do. So it is what it is. It's a piece of rope, and but it means so much more, I think.
I agree. So this is going to sound a bit shallow, but I find it to be a powerful symbol, but a relatively straightforward one. Like whereas with some of them, you sort of think more and more about it and other aspects of it, and there's more than one side. And here I feel like there's a definite power and importance to it, but that it's relatively straightforward when I think about what it symbolizes, at least to me.
Yeah, and when I was researching it and thinking about the cable tow, I hadn't thought about it as, like you said, it was to me it was just a piece of cord, and I thought I understood what the symbolism was behind it. What hit me was that maybe we should be giving our brothers or the candidates a little more instruction on the power of this core rather than just. Yeah, we talk about it in our lectures. We talk about it. There are various spots of during the degree or after the degree or through, but does it get its limelight? Does it get its spotlight? And it is a very powerful symbol. And again, like you said, the attachment to the lodge and attachment to their brethren. That is the item, and in place of it now is our obligation. And so that's why the power of the obligation is so important, I think. And again, all these symbols come together. It's unfortunate that even myself, it's unfortunate I haven't studied this sooner to understand this and to be part of it. Again, through the ritual, we see it, understand it, but it's even more powerful when you study it.
I agree. As with so many of these things, the more you sit and contemplate them, the more you learn. Absolutely, the unexamined life and etc.
Absolutely.
So with that, thank you all very much for coming to the Working Tools podcast today and listening to us discuss the cable tow. And I look forward to hearing from you on social media and in the near future. Thank you for coming. Thanks, David.
Have a good night.
Good night.